What's up, guys? Artem MMA Analysis here. Going to be talking about Dana White's Contender Series 2022 Week 3, and I'm getting a lot better now. If you guys don't know, I was sick yesterday, quite sick when I recorded my UFC video, and I have been quite sick for the whole week, but I'm getting a lot better, and I just want to say thank you guys so much for the support as well on my channel. I believe I hit 2,000 subscribers quite recently, and now all of a sudden I believe I've got around 2,100, so thank you very much for everyone that has come in to support my channel. Last week I went 3-2 on my predictions. I got the first 3 fights right, and I got the last 2 fights wrong. So that's a bit of a shame. I was pretty close to that perfect card in a way. I was on a 3 fight win streak, I guess you could say, in the predictions, and it all fell away on me. But I don't want to waste too much time on the predictions, but I'm really looking forward to this card. We've got Bono Cal at the top, who's a potential star. Very interested to see if he does actually get signed to the UFC. It's such an inexperienced career, I guess you would say. But yeah, let's just get straight into the predictions. Alright, now the first fight of the night is Sandra Lovato versus Karolina Wozick, and I'm gonna be honest, guys, it's not one that you can look forward to, truthfully. I mean, out of these two girls' wins, I mean, a combined 18 wins, we got 6 finishes. This fight is 110% going the distance. Both girls aren't really the greatest finishers in the world. Sandra Lovato does have 4 wins by submission. Karolina Wozick does have 2 wins by KO, but I don't know. I don't think Lovato is going to be able to submit Karolina Wozick in this one here, so I am picking Wozick to win, and I'm picking Wozick to win by a decision. So kind of what happens in this fight here is, I would say, pure striking, Lovato might be the better striker, but Karolina Wozick is more aggressive, and she does throw a lot more output and a lot more volume, and I would also say she's got the better pure wrestling, and she's a bit stronger. So I think if it comes to it, when in doubt in low-level women's MMA, use the clinch, and I think that Karolina Wozick is going to be using the clinch here to win the fight, to win the minutes, to get the control time, and even then, if she needs to, she can wrestle the fight to the mat as long as she stays safe and doesn't get submitted by Lovato, who, to be fair, hasn't actually really submitted the greatest levels of girls in general. She submitted a unanimous submission, whatever that is, on a record against a girl that was 0-1. And then, last girl she submitted was a debuting girl about 3 years ago, so she hasn't submitted anyone for a long time. Karolina Wozick, on the other hand, she has actually been fighting pretty good competition, to be truthful to her, so she had a pretty good amateur record. She lost her debut to Corey McKenna, who's in the UFC now, and I think Corey McKenna was probably like 17 years old or something at that time of that fight, which is pretty awesome. But she went on like a 7-fight amateur win streak, then made her debut, lost to Cheyenne Velismus, who's in the UFC now, and then she lost to Abuelina Wozniak, who's a pretty good prospect herself now. I believe she's got a 7-1 record, and the lady that beat her recently is going to be fighting on Dana White's Contender Series later, I believe, is how that goes. But anyway, that doesn't matter. She's been beating pretty good competition. She beat a girl that was 5-2 at Brave CF, which is a pretty respectable promotion. Beat a girl that was 9-5 on KSW, 3-1 on KSW. She's beaten all these girls by decision, and she hasn't finished anyone since the start of her career. I don't expect her to finish anyone in this fight here against Sandra Lovato. One thing that's definitely worth noting about Lovato, though, is that both of her losses are to the same girl. Earlier on in her career, she lost to this girl, Carla Elizabeth Sanchez Lozano, and then she fought her again and lost to her again. She's lost 2 times to the exact same girl, so I don't know. I think that she's going to lose to Karolina Wozick here. I think Wozick is stronger. I think she's more aggressive. I think she's going to throw a lot more volume. And if she needs to, she can wrestle. She can use the clinch. She can get clinch control and wrestle the fight to the ground. I'm really interested to know what the odds are. As you guys know, I do record these before the odds come out. But I think Karolina Wozick probably should be able to win this fight here. Yeah, that's kind of all I've really got. I think Wozick is just going to be the stronger girl, and I think she's going to throw more output. I think she's going to be more aggressive, and I think she's going to be able to utilize clinch if she needs to. So give me Wozick to win this one. And as we move on to the next one, we've got Clayton Carpenter taking on Edgar, and Edgar is a somewhat short notice replacement for Steven Usyk, who Clayton Carpenter was originally going to fight. Steven Usyk was a guy that is 8-1, and he is from Australia, and he's a really good jiu-jitsu player, but he couldn't get a visa or something to fight in the US, so Edgar Chairez has stepped in on somewhat short notice. I'd say about 2 or 3 weeks notice. Edgar Chairez has taken this fight, but I've been looking forward to talk about Clayton Carpenter. You know what I mean? Clayton Carpenter At first glance, he does look like a guy who hasn't fought the greatest level of competition. But if you look into this guy's not mixed martial arts record, but his martial arts record, this guy has achieved some great things. So at a young age. So what he did was he was the USA Junior National Muay Thai champion as an amateur, multiple-time World Junior Pancration medalist, Arizona Golden Glove State Boxing champion, IBJJF European Open gold medalist, and in 2010 was the Junior European Grappling or Pancration gold medalist. And also, if you guys don't know who Aaron Pico is, who Aaron Pico probably does have very similar accomplishments and is in Bellator, making some pretty big things go on in Bellator. He has actually got a win over him in Pancration as well, and I believe that was in 2009, which is pretty awesome. So, Clayton Carpenter, really good fighter, really good, well-rounded fighter, and I think he's going to win this fight by using his grappling here. As I said, like, he's got a really good IBJJF background there. But Edgar Chairez, this guy's a scrapper, you know what I mean? If Edgar Chairez is going to win, it's going to be on the feet. He's not really the most technical striker in the world, in my opinion, but he does throw a lot of combinations, he does throw a lot of knees, and he does have a pretty good clinch himself. But what Clayton Carpenter's kind of going to bring to this one is a very strong wrestling game, very strong ground and pound game, and a good submission game as well. Very slick jiu-jitsu, especially when he's on top. And I think that's where Edgar Chairez is weaker. I think that's his weakest part of his game, you know what I mean? He's a good scrapper, he's a good striker. It's not the most technical striker in the world, but he is a pretty good striker. All of his losses have come to guys that have really looked to take him down. His first loss of his career was to a triangle armbar in 2018, and then he lost to Alberto Trujillo, who's a pretty good wrestler, and then he lost to Jesus Santos Aguilar by guillotine very late into the 5th round, which is an unfortunate loss there. But he's a good fighter, you know what I mean? In my opinion, this is a much tougher test. For Clayton Carpenter than Stephen Usyk would have been. Stephen Usyk, in my opinion, was probably a little bit too one-dimensional for Clayton Carpenter in this one, but I think Clayton Carpenter, he's going to look to wrestle, he's going to look to grapple, and I think he's going to find a submission or even like a ground and pound sort of TKO or something like that. But I'm really expecting Clayton Carpenter to use his grappling advantage and take Edgar Chairez down to look for a submission win. If you look at all of his wins, I believe they've all come very early on in the first round. He does have one decision win over Manuel Medina, but before that, he's got a rear naked choke win, and after that, he's got a lot of KO wins, very fast KO wins as well. But I like Clayton Carpenter as a prospect, man. I'm really hyped up for him. Maybe Edgar Chairez has got really good cardio. I mean, as you've seen, he's been 5 rounds before. He's fought some pretty good competition himself. He's definitely tested himself against better levels of competition than Clayton Carpenter has, in my opinion. But I think it's pretty hard to overlook what Clayton Carpenter is going to be bringing into this mixed martial arts fight. I think Clayton Carpenter gets a contract with this one if he wins inside the distance, and I think he's going to get it done. And don't forget as well, Edgar Chairez is taking this fight on about 2 or 3 weeks notice, so good for him, great opportunity for both guys, but really excited for Clayton Carpenter moving forward in this one. And in this next one, we've got Anvar Boy Nazarov taking on Eric Silva, and what Anvar Boy Nazarov brings to the table is a crazy kickboxing record. We're seeing a lot of really good kickboxers transition to MMA. Like, you've got Israel Adesanya, I believe is probably the most notable one. And then you've got Alex Pereira. And then there's a few more. Cedric Doumbé is going to be making his UFC debut, and he's like a Glory 2-time champion. And now we've got Anvar Boy Nazarov, who has got a really crazy kickboxing record of 95 wins, 27 losses, which is pretty awesome. And he has won some pretty great competitions in his career. He's been fighting in Glory. He was a runner-up in a Glory kickboxing tournament, and now later on into his kickboxing career, or later on into his martial arts career in general, he has been now going to be making the transition into MMA. But the problem is, man, in my opinion here, I don't think he's going to be able to get past Eric Silva. Eric Silva, he's 34 years old. He's a much older prospect. Anvar Boy Nazarov's pretty old too, but he's got a pretty good excuse. He had a massive kickboxing career before transitioning to MMA, and now he's taking on Eric Silva, who's a really good grappler. I believe he's got 4 wins by submission, and I think he's got 2 wins by KO as well. But he's on a four-fight submission streak over a guy that was 18-6, a guy that was 12-5, 6-6, and a guy that was 8-3. So this guy is actually submitting decent levels of MMA fighters, guys that have been training grappling and stuff like that. But for Anvar Boy Nazarov, no disrespect to him, but the truth is, You know, he only made his MMA debut about a year and a half ago, and before that, he's probably only training MMA for a few months, or maybe a year before that as well. So, I don't really know what Anvar Boy Nazarov's grappling defense is going to look like. You know, he's never really been tested in his career. He's 3-0 with 3 pretty awesome KOs. He's actually a very exciting fighter to watch, and even his kickboxing fights are really exciting to watch as well. But this guy, he won his debut with a KO a minute and 10 seconds into the first round, and then he beat a guy a minute and 39 seconds into the first round. It was 1-10, and then he took on a pretty good test against John Pham, who was 4-2. You know, considering the level of considering he's only 2-0 in MMA, but then he beat him in 21 seconds. So yeah, I think Eric Silva's not going to mess around on the feet with Anvar Boy Nazarov, and I think we're going to see him shoot for a takedown pretty early on into this fight. But if Eric Silva decides to strike with Anvar Boy Nazarov, I don't like it. I don't like it at all, you know. Boy Nazarov, he's training out of Tiger Muay Thai, is what his Tapology page says, which is pretty cool, but he's such a good fighter, man. Like, he's such a good striker. But Eric Silva is just gonna bring the fight to the ground, in my opinion. We haven't seen Boy Nazarov's grappling tested. Sorry, my Bluetooth mouse decided to not work. No, there we go. It's working now. I'm just looking at my You're looking at my notes. Yeah, I think the MMA experience as well is gonna play a pretty big part. You know, Eric Silva, a lot more used to MMA, I guess you could say. You know, I feel like if the UFC wanted Anvar Boy Nazarov to win and get a highlight reel KO, they wouldn't have put him up against the grappler. I feel like they should have put him up against the striker or something like that and really tested them. But they haven't. They've given him Eric Silva, who's on a 4-fight submission streak. Yeah, I don't know why the UFC did this, because I feel like they probably would have wanted Anvar in the UFC, because he would have been pretty marketable for his KO. Sorry, for his kickboxing background, and also all of his KOs, and also his fighting style is just so exciting to watch as well. But Eric Silva, so much more mixed martial arts experience, 4-fight submission streak. I think he's going to get the submission, and I think if he does it pretty early on into the fight, maybe he gets a contract. The thing is, he's 34 years old, so if he's going to make something happen, he has to make it happen now. Most of Tapology is picking Eric Silva to win. I think that's pretty fair. You know, it's pretty hard to tell what is Boy Nazarov gonna bring in mixed martial arts against a pretty good grappler in Silva. I don't know. I haven't seen any grappling out of Boy Nazarov, so I don't know. I don't know what he's gonna look like. All of his wins have taken place in less than 2 minutes. So give me Boy Nazarov. No, sorry. Give me Eric Silva to win by submission here, probably in the first round. I think it will probably happen. I don't think this fight is gonna last very long at all, either way. And we move on to Paulo Hanato Jr. versus Jamal Pogues. And if you guys don't know this, I record my videos before the odds come out, and I've never been so interested to know what the odds are going to be before a fight than this one. You know, we've got Jamal Pogues sitting at 23% on the Tapology votes, and Hanato Jr. 77% on the Tapology votes. I'm picking Jamal Pogues, and I will tell you guys why a little bit later on, but it's mainly just due to the red flags that I'm getting out of Paulo Hanato Jr. It's so hard to find any information on this guy. There's like no fight tape on him at all, so I don't really know anything about him. And also, a big red flag that has come up in my opinion is he was fighting in 2017 at 170 pounds. He took 4 years off and then started fighting at 265 pounds. So yeah, he fought here at this tournament quarterfinals at 170, and then he come back after about 4 years off and fought at 265. So I guess that's interesting. That's cool. He's 6 foot as a heavyweight, which isn't the tallest heavyweight in the world. We recently saw a 6 foot tall heavyweight in Danilo Suzate, and he was very, very short compared to the 6'4" heavyweight that he was fighting in Waldo Cortez Acosta last week. But that's not really the point. What I do know about Paulo Hanato Jr. is that he's a very good striker, and I'm going to shout out MMA Wizard for giving me this information. That is MMA Wizard with 2 Z's on Twitter, and he's really good at talking about prospects. But he found out that Paulo Hanato Jr. has a really good kickboxing record. So in kickboxing, he was a Pan-American champion, Brazilian champion, 5-time Guacho kickboxing champion, a 2-time Brazilian Cup kickboxing champion, and also, yeah, he also does mention that he fought at 2017 at welterweight and moved up to heavyweight. So That's interesting. So, but the point is, I can't find much information on this guy whatsoever. I really can't find out much about his fight tape. I can't really find much about his fight style. But he is known for a lot of KOs. He also does have one submission on his record, but that was about 5 years ago. But Jamal Pogues, he's a very low risk wrestling grinder. You know, he recently beat Tim Hiley, which I guess is somewhat of a good win. I believe that Tim Hiley was on Dana White's Contender Series at some point or something like that. He lost to Alex Polizzi, who's doing somewhat big things at Bellator. I think that he's probably most well known for getting his jaw completely separated by Yoel Romero. Pretty scary, not gonna lie. He beat Marcos Brigadeo on the Dana White's Contender Series a few years ago, and he had a really padded record. Paulo Hanato Jr. also has a padded record as well. Might I add, he's never really fought anyone super great. And Jamal Pogues, you know, he hasn't fought for about 2 years' time. He's coming up a weight class. He last fought at light heavyweight. Now he's fighting at heavyweight. So I don't know how he's going to look. I don't know if he's been training for those 2 years or what he's been up to. But he's taken this fight on somewhat short notice. Paulo Hanato Jr. was meant to fight some sort of other Brazilian with a ridiculously padded record himself. But I'm picking Jamal Pogues. I'm picking Jamal Pogues to win a decision. I don't think it's going to be the most exciting fight in the world. I think he's going to look to wrestle with Paulo Hanato Jr. I think he's going to look to take him down and kind of grind him out and win a decision that way. But maybe with the way that Dana White is giving these guys speeches to impressive and fight more exciting and stuff like that, maybe Jamal Pogues looks to strike with Hanato Jr. and Hanato Jr. just knocks him out. But I think Pogues is gonna wrestle. I think Pogues is gonna wrestle. He's gonna do his low risk grinding style. Maybe look for some ground and pound and stuff like that. But yeah, the pick's Jamal Pogues to win by decision here. I think he's gonna beat Hanato Jr. in the wrestling department, because I don't know anything about Hanato Jr.'s grappling. So that's the pick, is Jamal Pogues. I'm really interested to know what the odds are. He's potentially going to be a big underdog looking at the Tapology votes, but we don't know anything about Hanato Jr., so it wouldn't make sense for Hanato Jr. to be a massive favourite anyway, but let's see. And we move into the main event. We've got Zachary Borrego taking on Bo Nickal, and I wouldn't be lying to you guys if I said this is a layout for Bo Nickal. It is. I mean, no disrespect to Zachary Borrego, but in MMA he hasn't impressed me too much. But he does have a pretty crazy background in Taekwondo. That's right. So Zachary Borrego is actually an Olympian in the Junior Olympics. He did get a silver medal in Taekwondo. So Zachary Borrego's got good striking. Obviously, he's got really good Taekwondo himself, but Bo Nickal's like an NCAA Division 1 wrestler. I know he's got some sort of insane wrestling background as well. For me, I don't really know what that means because I'm from New Zealand and wrestling is so non-existent here, so I don't really know what it means, but I know that he's been hyped up as some sort of amazing wrestler. He's been hyped up as some sort of awesome prospect. In fact, like in his last fight, he knocked out this debuting guy who was like almost 40 years old. Within a minute or something crazy like that. Like he's obviously a very explosive guy. I believe he's training at a big gym as well, and he's been training MMA for quite a while. He did make his amateur debut 10 months ago and won that one. I mean, you can't really find much information on his amateur fights, but he won those and he made his pro debut, and that was super hyped up. The UFC was posting about it, this and that, so obviously the UFC have been wanting to sign Bo Nickal. They're giving him Zachary Borrego, who's a really good Taekwondo fighter, as I said, silver medalist in the Junior Olympics, but I think Bo Nickal wins it. You know, he's got the wrestling in the back pocket. Zachary Borrego, I mean, he's obviously been training Taekwondo pretty much his whole life. On the other hand, we've got Bo Nickal training wrestling his whole life. So if it comes down to it, Bo Nickal's going to look to wrestle and beat up Zachary Borrego from there. I think what's going to happen is Bo Nickal's going to take Zachary Borrego down pretty early on into the fight and then just ground and pound him out. But if Borrego uses that crazy Taekwondo background that he does have and knocks out Bo Nickal, that would be such an amazing upset. But I think this is a layout for Bo Nickal. I think Bo Nickal is going to look to use his wrestling in this one here, not like he did in his debut. And I think he's going to take down Zachary Borrego and use some ground and pound to win the fight from there. So give me Bo Nickal to win the fight inside the distance pretty early on, probably into the first and second round.